Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We are going to wrap up this week with some brand new music. Well, it's like 2 weeks old now, but it's still brand new to me, alright? I'm just now hearing about it. I was asked on the Discord if I had heard of this yet because it was this person's in their top 5 songs for the year so far. And I thought, yeah, I'll go ahead and check this out then. We got some Static Dresses here with the song Face, period. Just one word sentence. Let's dive into this and see what Static Dresses is bringing to the table today.
It's just lies, nothing serious. 15 gymnastic kisses had too much. Is it safe?
Lots of bounce because of this 3 pulse. Still having a heavy emphasis on beat 1. Oh, the release of all that tension. Yeah, there's still a triplet feel in here, but I would probably write that section in 4/4. Dude, the drums have so much control over the energy of the song. Wait, really? 2 minutes 24 seconds. How did I not notice that going in? Well, I'm a little disappointed. Not in the song, just, in the length of it. I want more. Is there a release date for this album? No. Is this just a solo, just a single then? Maybe the album's already out? I gotta look into this. I'm vaguely aware of Static Dress, I think. The name seems familiar. I gotta look into it though. Anyways, though, yeah, just it's too short of a song, honestly, and that's my only criticism for it, really, which is, a good one, I suppose. For my only complaint being that I wanted more. It's it's a good song though. It kicks off real heavy. We have well, see, that's the thing too, right? We have a couple of clean vocal lines before moving into some harshes. The guitars, though, the drum work on all of this, heavy emphasis on beat 1, and then a sort of allowing space to exist in 2 and 3. Not to say that we remove anything. The drums are still playing in beats 2 and 3. The guitars are still playing their riffs in 2 and 3. There's just such an emphasis on beat 1 that the other two feel a bit, not necessarily empty, but more spacious. And so there's this high impact and then the letdown, and then the high impact and then the letdown. It's sort of this like, dang, what would a visual representation? I mean, I was, that's a pretty good visual, I suppose. But it's like popping a balloon in the air, right? And then it hits the like the apex of its height and it starts to descend down again, and then you hit it, and it's a really quick bounce up, and then that sort of slower descent down. That's what I really feel like in this opening section. I think it's really well done. There's also an obvious 3/4 pulse going on here, which is that impact on 1 and then the levity on the 2 and the 3. So musically, I wouldn't say it's that heavy yet, and we will play around with highly dissonant tones in a little bit too, and some heavier drumming. But the harsh vocals come in rather quickly, and I think that threw me off a little bit. We had cleans for a couple of seconds, and I was really expecting them to be setting this, setting the tone with this opening sound, and they don't. They give you cleans for a couple of seconds and then dive into some harshes. But I think it's a really great opening. Tons of energy. Dude, just the feeling of it, the way that they play, because it's almost a waltz. With the way that there's emphasis on beat 1 and not on 2 and 3. I mean, a waltz is like boom, 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 boom. They're not playing a waltz at all here, but they're kind of retaining that way of pulsating in the song through the way that they're dealing with this heavy emphasis on beat 1 as well. It's a similar feeling despite a very different execution of the idea. We have some wild guitar riffs going on here as well. This transitions us into another style of harsh vocal, this one higher pitched than the first. I think this was one of the first times I noticed that there's multiple vocalists in the band, which I thought was pretty cool. I also picked up out of the corner of my eye, I wasn't necessarily watching the music video, but it did catch my attention real quick. There is a 1 or 2 second shot of the drummer also kind of leaning over and singing into a mic too. So I'm curious how many people handle vocals on this. Maybe not necessarily lead vocals, because I do think that there is the main vocalist, and then I think the guitarist was shown doing vocals quite often too. So I would say that there's 2 main vocalists here, but I wonder if the rest of the band, how often they contribute vocals and in what capacity. Is it just more harshes? Is it for like group vocal stuff, or do they provide clean vocals or harmonies on places too? Basically, how much finesse do the rest of the vocalists have? Because I think we only had clean vocals from one person on this track. So again, just something for me to explore and dig into as I check out more of Static Dress's work. But I thought that was pretty cool. I'm always a big fan of multiple vocalists, and here we got some cool layered and stacked harshes towards the end of the song, so I dug that. And we had a variety of harshes, not necessarily simultaneously, but sequentially at the beginning of the song, which gave it a little bit of diversity too, because both vocalists pretty much had that one tone. They didn't really deviate too much from that, and so having different vocalists with different types of harshes really helps keep the song kind of pushing forward and feeling fresh from moment to moment. Now, it wasn't long after this that we entered into what would be pre-chorus, maybe. It is just super noisy, but kind of fun too. We have the guitars playing these really tense dyads, 2 notes, probably a half step apart, amplified by the distortion and the compression, and more importantly, the overdrive of the guitars. And it's just these very gnarly harmonies. And we get one, and then the drums hit, and the guitars cut out for a couple of, I guess, one whole bar then. And then they come back in again with a higher pitch, seemingly more dissonant dyad right after that. And they're kind of playing around with a bunch of different dissonant textures at this point. Never really sitting on one for too long, but giving you, sitting on it long enough for you to feel that texture, to feel that tension and anxiety before ducking away from it and going into a different level of tension. I thought that was pretty cool. We have the harsh vocals going on at this point as well. The drums, it feels like the drummer is hitting the drums harder at this point. I don't know if it's maybe it's a production thing where they've kind of bumped up the presence of the drum kit in this section. It just feels more impactful than the other place. The rest of the verse. Um, and all of this tension, this buildup, this tightening of the chest releases in the chorus. I thought this was beautiful, and I enjoyed this transition into the chorus more than the second time coming into it because we didn't have this. The second time through was more of like, oh, the song's almost over, let's hit that chorus again, more so than this, which feels like a very natural extension of the heavy but fluidness of the intro of the song, and then the tension of those half step dyads, and now the release of all of that into something lighter, into something that's closer to I guess maybe a rock sound. We're just looking at mostly chord progression, lighter drum work. We're definitely not dealing with anything tense or dissonant anymore. And we have clean vocals here, too. It just feels like the release of everything that we've been listening to up until this point. And there just feels like there's a lot going on, despite there not. The drum work lightens up. It's not as intense. Like I said, the guitars getting a lot of chordal foundational stuff here too. There are some moving lines in here, but they're not as intense as what we heard in the verse. So I don't know. I got to go back and listen. I was very overwhelmed at this point. I think primarily just the release of everything and feeling that emotionally. But I remember just thinking, like, there's a lot going on. Maybe there were multiple vocalists. I'm kind of tempted to listen to it. I mean, it's 2 minutes, right? Maybe I will. Let me get this thought out first. Um, and then from here, we begin to explore a breakdown. And I think this is a really interesting way to go about this because we have all this rising tension at the beginning of the song, and then it sort of dips down a little bit, and we have this release, this resolution of all that anxiety for something that feels more calming and soothing. And it's almost like a false sense of that relief because the floor kind of gives way and we enter into this breakdown section that is gnarly, it's aggressive, there's wild textures to it, there's crazy guitar licks, we have screaming from like every band member. I saw at least 3 people providing vocals on this section, and I don't know what happened. This felt like a flurry, like a whirlwind of ideas. I felt like I was trying to latch on to some sort of rhythmic pulse to it, or kind of catch on to when we would have these accents of this breakdown, and it kind of slipped through my fingers a little bit. And before I knew it, we were already leaving that section and coming back to a build up into the chorus. It was a whirlwind. I think that's the best way to describe it. And then the chorus comes back, and then the song wraps up. And then I was left disappointed because I didn't realize it was only 2 minutes long. But that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. And honestly, like I've said many times in the past, it's much better to leave me wanting more than for me to be wishing the song had ended a little earlier than it did. And they definitely left me wanting more. A lot more. Now, the last thing I want to bring up before we hit lyrics here, actually, I do want to listen to the song again, so I'm going to talk about this first just because it's on my mind. But one thing I really like about the song is that generally most of it has this 3-pulse idea. This is consistent through the verse, the breakdown, and the chorus. But the chorus also has a little bit of a 4-pulse thing going on too. I don't think it's quite as apparent. If you're not looking for it, it probably feels pretty good just to continue to headbang or move your body or dance or whatever you're doing in this three pulses. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we kind of keep that heavy emphasis on beat 1 throughout the entirety of the song, aside from the breakdown, which is kind of bonkers. But when you're listening in the chorus, you listen to what the drums are doing, you can find a 4 pulse in there. For every 3, the 1, 2, 3, you're going to have 1, 2. And so beats 1 and 2 are going to cover the 3 pulse, and beats 3 and 4 are going to cover the other 3 pulse. And if we have 2 beats that are representing 3 beats, that's a hemiola. That's a 3 against 2 polyrhythm. And this chorus is absolutely based on a hemiola. Now what's interesting is I don't really feel the hemiola. There's a very specific rhythm to that. I don't know if the microphone's going to pick this up because I have like noise canceling stuff on it, but that's a hemiola. I don't really feel that rhythm anywhere in the chorus, but it's almost implied. I can hear it even though I don't feel it from any of the instruments, the combinations of the rhythms they're specifically playing in this. And it's because the 3 pulse isn't just 3 beats. It's not 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There's syncopation to it. There's eighth notes in there. It's not just a series of quarter notes. There's different variation of rhythms in there. And that goes the same with the 4 pulse that the drums play too. It isn't just a series of 4 quarter notes. There's syncopation in there. The bass kick is playing around against the snare accents. There's a variety of rhythms. And so I can feel the hemiola in my mind. I can place it in there. I can feel the 3 and the groupings of 2 simultaneously. But there isn't any point where I hear those specific backbeats, the pulse of those 2 kind of going back and forth with each other and creating that very unique polyrhythm. And I kind of like that because it creates sort of an implicit feel. Explicit? No, explicit would be overt. Yeah, an implicit feel, something that you can kind of tune into if you want, but isn't expressly stated in the music. And I think that's a pretty cool way of incorporating a polyrhythm without ever really stating, hey, this is a polyrhythmic section, because it kind of doesn't feel polyrhythmic, but it is. And it's just sort of this invisible rhythmic structure going on there. I'm going to listen to this track real quick one more time, and then if I have anything to add, we'll do that. Otherwise, lyrics time. So just 2 quick things that I wanted to bring up, and then one major topic. The first 2 is that the breakdown actually isn't that chaotic. There is a wild drum fill that happens for about 2 bars that if you didn't catch beat 1 at the beginning, it's going to be real hard to get your footing after that. But the rest of the breakdown, while very chaotic, there's lots of sounds going on. The rhythmic timing actually wasn't that difficult to pick up on, so I don't know what I was going about on that earlier. The other thing is that there are a ton of really cool production stuff going on in here, particularly a heavy use of glitch that I think pairs very nicely with the destructive harmonic components that they're playing around with, particularly those heavily dissonant dyads. So I think that's a nice pairing of like production sound with compositional technique to create something that feels even more aggressive than if they had just gone from a compositional perspective. But the last thing, I meant to bring this up during the reaction, and I think I started to, and something pulled my mind away from it. The drummer does not really stick to an idea for very long, and because of that, they actually control so much of how the song feels. Even just look at the first verse in isolation. There are 4 different drum parts to, from when the song starts to the time that we hit that catchy, clean vocal chorus. There's like 4 different drum parts in there. And it changes how the song feels. Sometimes it has that levity, right? Where you have that really heavy first attack, and then, like I said, the soft falling, and then the punch back up, and then the soft falling. This is really delivered by the drums, because the guitars will continue to play this riff But the drums will change over to something a bit more driving. Maybe they'll start playing around with syncopation. Maybe they'll have a pretty cool like snare and bass kick idea where the snare hits on specific beats, and then the bass kick always plays around with off beats around it to kind of create this bounciness against this rigid attack. That feels more driving. It feels more forward momentum. There's a moment right after this when the drums kind of go into a more straightforward rock beat for a moment, and that just kind of hits a strong element of groove. It's still no longer this bouncing element, it's just momentum. And then they'll cut that, they'll do a halftime on that, and now it feels like we're being pulled back again. And this starts to feel more like the first part, where there's bursts followed by decays. And all of that is handled by the drums. The guitars don't really change what they're doing too much. The vocal melody, I mean, the vocals are screaming. There's no melody there. It's all rhythm and texture. Their rhythmic delivery doesn't really change much either. All of this is controlled. Every bit of how the song feels to the listener from a groove, rhythmic, and even in some cases an emotional sense is driven entirely by the drums. They have so much control about how this song feels, even going into that breakdown. Like I said, what felt most chaotic about it, what for whatever reason, what I remembered after my first listen was a chaotic, difficult to follow idea, and that was just 2 bars of it. That was a drum solo. The rest of the breakdown was fairly easy to follow, but what I remembered was the drums commanding and breaking time. That's just, they have so much control over the both the time feel but also the emotional feel of this track, and I think that's wonderful. That's not usually a topic I bring up, and it certainly happens more often than I think I bring it up. It's not like this is the first band where the drummer has that much weight and mastery over stuff like that, but I think it's the first time it's really ever clicked with me in a way that I was like, oh, this is something that I'm thinking about and can vocalize, and I think that's pretty awesome. um Let me hit some lyrics here, and then we're going to wrap this one up. Alright, so this is a breakup song that uses the metaphor of a car crash to draw parallels and talk about the breakup itself. Um, at the beginning, it seems that the narrator is being hit by some realizations, maybe truth or not, but the very first line is, "It's just lust, nothing serious." And I think that we'll see later on that it appears that the narrator thought this was a more serious relationship, and this feels very biting because of that. Although, as a first line, it doesn't really have much impact yet, especially since we don't know who's saying it. Um, so it says, "Is it safe? Hit the brakes, shell shock love affair, he just forgets your name." So wondering if this this car ride, this relationship, is it safe? Is my heart going to get hurt here? Or am I going to get hurt here? Depending on, if you're looking at the metaphor or the surface level idea of the car crash. It says, "Rerun affection. These leather seatbelts we've both bonded to. Sober love won't last long. Charaded farewell is a slow kiss goodbye." I like the idea of a charaded farewell, a pantomimed going through the motions kind of thing. There's no reality to it. This goodbye is simply just motions. It shows a lack of intimacy and even maybe a lack of emotion to the relationship as a whole. And, if you can end a relationship and just kind of go through the motions on the final goodbye, I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't know, man. Even if you feel like you've been wronged in a relationship and you're ending it because things aren't working out for you, like, it still sucks to end it. It's still the end of something. So the beginning of the song says, 15 deep now, she can see he's had too much. I wonder if this is supposed to represent a length of time of the relationship. Maybe we're 15 months deep into this. And like I said, it's still the end of something. If you can do that and not have any emotional release, any emotional feeling from the end of this relationship, the entire thing kind of feels empty then. And that is another way that I think for the narrator this kind of stings. But it says that there's holding life with bated breath, constricting lack of control, talking about kind of being out of control of this whole situation. They don't want the relationship to end. They don't, they're not trying to crash the car, but that's what's happening. The chorus kicks in, says, treat this love as a car crash. I hope my heart will burst on impact. Far too hard to maintain this. So just kind of feeling very overwhelmed, exceptionally overdramatic, very emo lyrics here. I hope my heart will burst on the impact of this car crash. I love it. It's campy, it's sappy, it is way over dramatic, and it is right up my alley. Um, Going into the second verse and the breakdown says, so give me back all that you took from me. Decorated through glass, this is how you made me feel. 20 gray tint over how you really feel, staring at the wreckage of my past. And I like this too. He says, this is how you've made me feel. I'm being very real here. I'm expressing myself. He says, but the way you feel is behind 20 gray tint, that you're trying to obscure and hide those feelings. And I think that lines up with her sort of cold response to everything at the beginning and her almost emotionalist goodbyes. It's described as being a charaded farewell. Yeah, very great line there. And bringing in the 20 gray tint, which of course you tint windows on a car. So we're sticking with this vehicle motif going throughout this. And he says he's staring at the wreckage of his past, which is a pretty standardly used metaphor. Anytime something's, a big mistake in your past, you call it a wreckage. That's just common vocabulary that I've heard. But also, we're talking about a car wreck. So yeah, this whole, I'm not entirely keen on on the metaphor they have, but I love their dedication to the bit and sticking with it, even here towards the end of the song. He says there's actions with no repercussions, heartbreak suspended in motion. He seems upset that the other person doesn't have any negative aspects to ending this. The final chorus, treat this love as a car crash. I hope my heart bursts far too hard to maintain this. But there's two new lines here. You replace me with your new friends, ashamed that they all wear the same face. And I think that's interesting. A little jab at the end against the other person, just to kind of get one little punch in. Because honestly, this entire thing, they seem rather innocent in, which of course, it's a one-sided story. We don't know what the other side looks like, but from their perspective, they're a victim through all of this, and they do get one little jab in at the end, though, and says, yeah, you're just hanging out with your friends, but they're all the same person. And I don't know. It feels kind of petty, but it is emo, so pettiness kind of goes hand in hand with it at times. This is coming from their upcoming EP Epilogue. All right, that's a little bit more information for me. So yeah, going along with the music, then my ideas of shifting momentum, of driving speed at times, the bridge, the breakdown, kind of being this moment where I lose track of time. It's very loud and noisy. I think they do a good job of kind of showcasing how out of control the song can be at times, and loud noises, sounds that are kind of antagonistic. So the idea of a car kind of losing control of it, careening and crashing, I think we can definitely attribute some of those aspects and especially descriptions of the metaphor of a car crash to the music. And that's not something I can usually say about emo. Usually this is a genre I'm like, I like it because it sounds good, right? It's kind of cool for me to be able to say, oh, there's some thematic ties here, as, loose as they are. It definitely captures that vibe of a car wreck pretty good. So, those are my thoughts. Static Dress Face. Let me know what you thought of this track, though. If there's anything that stood out to you, anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on, maybe you have your own interpretation of things, please put all of that and any other thoughts you have down into the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. As usual, we have our album review. There is also a bonus video that I'll toss out 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is continuing on with the whatever theme from a few weeks back that I didn't get to finish since I got sick that week. We're still catching up on that. We have one tomorrow and then one next Saturday, and we'll finally have gotten through all 5 picks for that theme. All right, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.